EPZ, that is another name which is growing day by day, and I have with me here two of the latest offering dongles, and here you can see in front of me here the latest edition of EPZ TP20 Pro Edition, okay, priced at 55 US dollar, as you can see here in AliExpress shop, which is belonging to EPZ Official Store. And let me introduce to you their flagship dongle, which is this TP50, priced much higher at 110 US dollar. So inside this simple box, what you're gonna get is this two dongle here that you see, all right? So let's just have a quick look first at TP20 Pro. Looking at the physical, doesn't change much from the TP20, which I have reviewed very recently. And I believe the internal of this TP20 pretty much remains the same. Let's just have a quick look here at the specification, the config, okay? So this is obviously a dual Cirrus logic CS43131, and pretty much if you look at the internal, some minor changes only if you were to compare with the TP20, which was released earlier, which is the power rating itself. Like it improved a bit on the milliwatt of power for the 4.4 mm balance, and also just slight reduction on the 3.5 mm single-ended. You can check my previous review on this TP20 in my other video. And then of course, with everything else remains the same with one major difference. Okay, see here, the body itself, it is supposedly to be half lighter than TP20. So if you remember, TP20 was built on aluminum chassis, okay, but it does have quite a bit of weight to it, to a point that it's kind of like really heavy, even compared with something like iBasso DC04 Pro, okay. But otherwise, everything else pretty much remains the same. Even this function button here, which is like, play and pause. And unfortunately, this one still also runs on non-independent volume adjustment. And it comes with this pretty much standard issue nowadays, high gain, low gain, and also this 4.4 mm balance and 3.5 mm single-ended with this premium cable, which is made of high purity copper, very well made, and I would say that this is definitely premium. Now, let's just have a look at the bigger brother, or the flagship for EPZ, which is TP50. Definitely you can have a look here. It is visibly larger as well by dimension, okay. Thickness pretty much remains the same, okay. And it also comes with this 4.4 mm balance and 3.5 mm single-ended, all right. But the major difference is here, this one, this LED display. And what you're going to find inside, just quickly, this is a dual Cirrus Logic CS43198, a higher version of the Cirrus Logic series, and it comes with this very important thing, dual RT6863 amplifier, and it also offers much higher power at 240 milliwatt of power from this 4.4 mm balance. And it also comes with this function button here, and this volume up and down, which also serve as the directional button. All right, so let's just fire this thing up, because I'll just be focusing a lot more on TP50 rather than TP20 Pro, because I believe this is pretty much same thing with the previous TP20. But let's just have a look at this baby here, this new guy. All right, so as you can see here, dot matrix display, all right, and this is the sort of display that you can expect from much more expensive dongle, okay. Let me just clarify that, because this is the sort of display that you can get from Luxury&Precision W4, or even this Colorfly CDA M2, or even let's say Shuangling UA4. So perhaps Shuangling UA4 is slightly cheaper, but pretty much the concept is the same. And using this button here, let me just share some of the function. Okay, by pressing it long here, okay, the first thing that appear will be the high and low gain. So you can select either high or low. I am always almost on high gain, right? And then the next one, which is left and right balance, which is pretty much standard. And of course, filter, I will go back here because I need to talk a bit more on that filter. And then of course, DAC operating mode, which is AB. I believe this has something to do with the amplification, how you want it to run. So I always should set it on AB, because that is the kind of amplification which I always prefer, okay. And then of course, it can also support digital out SPDIF from the 3.5 mm single-ended. And you have something here, which is HD pop, which is a similar kind of function that you might find on other DAC amp for highly sensitive stuff, especially like hybrid, to eliminate, some sort of a pop sound for those highly sensitive IM. And then, of course, let's just go back. And where were we? Okay. And the next one, of course, display brightness, rotation, right? And this is how long you want it to remain active. Okay. And of course, some other function. But let's just go back to filter, because this is perhaps one of the most important feature of this TP50. Okay, let me just go back there to the filter. Okay, as you can see here, I already selected slow PC because that is pretty much what I like. Okay. And let me just clarify this. All right, you have a lot here: fast PC, fast low latency, non-OS, which is NOS, non-oversampling, slow PC, okay, slow LL. Okay, going back to fast PC. And this is where I want to talk a bit more on this filter. You see, I have played with so many dongle DAC amp which offer this kind of filter, right? But I must admit, the most effective implementation of filter so far that I have seen is definitely coming from this TP50. Because why? When I attach it to my headphone here, all right, which I will show you later, and some of my IEM, I can clearly hear the differences that it apply to the output itself. For example, I have shown to you just now that I use slow LL pretty much most of the time, okay? Because that is where the temperament of the sound, the timbre, the pace, the rhythm, all right, the attack and the decay of the output, pretty much something which I would consider as being very analog sounding. The kind of, balance, especially when paired with something which is relatively bright, like this Hi-Fi Man Sundara, or even Etimotic ER2XR here, or even, let's say, some of my bright sounding IM, which is, I have Tanjim Origin over there, okay? It does impart that kind of, natural balance to the sound itself. But if I want a bit more of transparency, less warm, okay, a bit more of pace to the sound itself, I will switch to non-oversampling, which is the NOS. So definitely that is something which is audible. I can literally hear it. And if I attach it to something which is warmer sounding, I consider this, let's say, Sivga Nightingale here, my favorite #1 magnetic planar, which is kind of warm sounding, all right? And I can hear that clearly, the fast LL or filter especially will add the kind of pace and crispness to the way it presents the sound itself. The edge of the sound, it just appears crisper, the attack smoother, or should I say more solid, yet smooth at the same time. And when I switch to slow filter on this Sivga, I can clearly hear that it gets warmer. So that's definitely very effective. For TP20 Pro, I will just simply declare that I would not be talking too much about it because, like I mentioned earlier, this is pretty much identical to the previous release of TP20 with just some minor changes in the cosmetic. It is lighter and some adjustment on the power delivery. But otherwise, after spending quite a bit of time with it, okay, this is definitely identical sounding to the previous TP20. The way I look at it, EPZ just released this with an improved ergonomic for the sake of making it a bit more, usable or more portable friendly. So I'll just go straight to this one. Let's just put our limelight into this TP50 because I can just tell you now, this is one of my top favorite, okay? Top 5 favorite. And let's talk about why is it my top 5 favorite. You see here my headphone. This is the headphone which I use the most, Sennheiser HD600. And also this Hi-Fi Man Sundara. As you can see here, the sort of time which I have spent using this TP50 was literally comparing it with my two desktop DAC amp here, which is Burson Audio Playmate 2, okay, with V7 op amp, and also my JDS Lab DAC 2 and amp 2. Right, it is that good, okay, that this TP50 was able to match, almost 90%, okay, to the performance being delivered by this JDS Lab, okay, when driving these two very demanding headphone, all right? And pretty much I would say that 85% to the performance of this Burson Audio Playmate 2. The differences being, okay, of course, Burson Audio Playmate would offer a bit more of resolution in imaging, okay, and this JDS Lab would offer a bit more of headroom and, you know, the openness of the soundstage itself and the richness of the texture and the definition of the, you know, macro detail and micro detail. But otherwise, if I am not comparing them side by side, I just, let's say, just listen to this TP50, I can swear, right, this is definitely sounding like a DAC amp, desktop DAC amp rather than a dongle. So how does it sound like? Remember I mentioned to you earlier, the filter, okay? Depending on what filter you choose and depending on what partner you attach to, for example, using this Atmos ER2 XR, I was already very impressed with the kind of sound which I am hearing from this long time favorite of Atmos. Right, this thing can be metallic sounding if attached to something which is not like analog, or should I say kind of a bit more on the digital side, you know, with the DAC itself. But the output which I had from this ER2 XR was organic, natural, neutral and natural, or perhaps close to being neutral because this is slightly boosted in the lower frequency. But otherwise, the transient itself is just top notch. Okay, the dynamic handling is just flagship level. That is how the best I would, you know, describe it. You know, the kind of performance you would expect from flagship like Luxury&Precision W4 or even Questyle M15 or even, let's say, some of the other top-notch dongle which I will show you later. This thing is super amazing when it comes to dynamic presentation, extension, details, macro and micro details and everything. And the best part is it, while doing all that, despite having, let's say, the warmer sounding filter being activated, it remains transparent and neutral. I do not hear any kind of coloration at all, regardless whether I use this one or this Sivga Nightingale here, or even this my Harman, my favorite Harman IM, which is Truth Ear Nova. And of course, one of my latest favorite as well, which is the most sensitive IM, which is Celeste Pandamon 2. And the reason that I spend my time using this is because this is probably the most sensitive IM which I have in my collection right now, other than Truth Ear Nova. So let's just talk about driving sensitive IM. You see, this thing will pick up noise, okay? If I attach it to my two of my desktop DAC amp here, especially the Burson Audio Playmate 2, when you subject this to so much power, you can hear floor noises. But the good thing is that this TP50, despite having such a huge amount of power for a dongle, okay, even running on high gain, okay, no floor noises at all. It's just simply pristine, and the dynamic, you know, cohesion itself is just clean sounding. There's no indication that this Celeste Pandamon 2 being shouty at all. So top notch there. Touching a bit more on the rest of the technical aspect of this TP50. You can be rest assured this is one of the widest sounding dongle in the market right now, alongside a few other, which I can mention after this, okay? And also, of course, I already mentioned that this thing is very resolving with macro, micro detail, but it is also quite holographic for usage of gaming or even binaural type of listening. And let's just, perhaps the only caveat, or should I say the only weakness of this TP50 is when attached to my phone here, which is Xiaomi Mi 90, running on 4000 mAh battery, driving tangent zero. I was only able to get maximum, the best, 9 hours of endurance before this phone ran out of battery. So I would have expect, you know, slightly better performance because I have seen better performance from other dongle with this kind of specification. And here we are, the best part, probably why you are here, compared against the rest of the competition in dongle madness. For the record, I have tested over 160 dongle. This is not all of them. I am just sharing with you some of the top performer in dongle madness since day one until today, okay? And let's just have a look at this TP20 Pro first. I did mention earlier, this is identical to TP20, and as such, the scoring is identical there, okay? Because the changes are just aesthetic. But this T50 is a totally different story. This thing is a beast, okay? Let's just quickly have a look at the highlight there, okay? In light blue color, all right? The scoring, the rating for this TP50, super impressive. About the only other dongle which was able to achieve that 10, 10, 9, 10 was this iBasso DC Elite, okay? Kayin RU7 and Aone Yuki. So I'm just going to spend quickly how do they differ from the other three dongle which are scoring similarly. Let's talk about DC Elite. Okay, I would just simply say that, you know, when I compare this and DC Elite, it is kind of like difficult for me to ascertain which one is superior than the other. That's how impressive it is, because the temperament of the sound, okay, of this TP50 is pretty much similar to DC Elite, with an exception that this, all right, TP50 will offer that filter. Remember that filter. So you can literally alter or change the rhythm and the momentum of the TP50, where else you can't do that with DC Elite. And DC Elite definitely costs a lot more. Okay, and then let's talk about Kayin RU7. So I must admit, when it comes to staging itself, perhaps the main difference between those two is that RU7 would appear, because of that implementation of a discrete resistor, which is similar to R2R, it has a bit more of that frontal approach to the sound itself, the mid-range, okay? And a bit more of, let's say, air to the decay, whereas this TP50 focus a bit more on the crisper edge decay rather than smooth. But it doesn't mean that this TP50 is not smooth. It is smooth, but I'm just saying that RU7 does appear to be slightly smoother. Okay, and then finally, Aone Yuki, one of my favorite. The major difference between these two, again, pretty much similar to RU7. Yuki focus a bit more on being airy with the decay and the way it present the dynamic transient, especially on the upper frequency. Otherwise, both of them are pretty much identical in many ways, okay? Both are excellent at driving magnetic planar, both are excellent with power delivery, and of course, last but not least, compared against my all-time favorite here, still, which is Hebe FC6, I will just simply admit, as you can clearly see there, this Hebe FC6 is a perfect 10 on all four. So when it comes to sound richness, okay, this TP50 just fall 1 point behind at 9 instead of 10, because if it were to be richer sounding, right, just by 1 point, it would have been already been able to match this Hebe FC6 when it comes to the richness of the sound, the texture and the definition itself. So there, that's how it looked like. Timbre Signature for the dongles, which I have mentioned earlier. You can pause the screen, have a look at it. And as noted earlier, this TP50 especially, I just like to pay attention to this TP50 because TP20 Pro is pretty much identical to TP20. This TP50 shared the same segment with Aone Yuki, with Ibaso DC Elite and Colorfly CDA M2 even. And in fact, Yuki and M2 shared the same deck inside with just different amplification module, okay? And also, of course, it shared the same slot with Kayin RU7 and RU6, okay? But let me just put it this way. It depends also on the filter that you choose, okay? If you choose fast filter on this TP50 and then use it, attach it to something like this Hi-Fi Man Sundara here, then the graph there might move slightly to the middle towards more hi-fi sort of sound. And that is the flexibility of this T50, which makes it so very appealing, okay? The way it react to different sort of filter is just simply mind-boggling. It is definitely the best in the market right now when it comes to flexibility. And I am not hesitant to say that, right, for a price of just 110 US dollar, this is definitely a bargain, a flagship dongle.